For almost 600 years, one dynasty just completely dominated the Brahmaputra Valley, building this incredibly powerful and resilient kingdom. This is the story of the Ahoms, and it all begins with an almost unbelievable journey that literally forged an empire.
Seriously, just let that number sink in. 600 years. That's longer than the Mughal Empire ruled India, and it's longer than the Romanovs ruled Russia. We're not just talking about a kingdom here. This was a civilization built to last. So you have to ask, how on earth did they pull it off? What was their secret? Well, it isn't just about the famous battles they won centuries later. Not at all. The real secret is in the brilliant, strategic foundation they built during their very first 100 years. So let's start right at the beginning.
Okay, so our story begins, well, not in Assam, but actually far to the east, with a prince who is about to change the course of the region's history forever.
Get this. In 1215, a Thai prince named Sukaphaa begins this absolutely monumental trek. Just try to picture it. For 13 grueling years, he leads his followers, we're talking nobles, priests, soldiers, entire families, across the rugged Patkai Hills. This is a formidable natural barrier between modern-day Myanmar and India. And then finally, in 1228, they emerge into the fertile Brahmaputra Valley.
And this is a really crucial point. This wasn't a conquest for glory. It was a migration for survival. They were leaving behind all sorts of political turmoil, searching for a stable place to build a new home. And that sense of purpose, well, it would define every single decision they made from then on.
You know, just arriving in a new land is one thing. But building a kingdom that lasts for 600 years? That is something else entirely. Sukaphaa's genius wasn't just that he survived the journey, but it was in the revolutionary way he went about building his new home.
So first things first, they established a clear political and spiritual authority. The Ahom kings adopted the title Swargadeo, which means Lord of the Heaven. Now this wasn't just some fancy royal title, it was a statement of divine right, a central pillar of their whole identity as rulers.
And here's what made Sukaphaa so different. He didn't just show up with swords drawn. His strategy was all about making allies, not subjects. He personally married into the local Moran and Boraha communities and built strong alliances with others, like the Sutias and the Kacharis. He wanted to integrate, not dominate, a policy that was so successful it earned him the title Architect of Greater Assam.
So you can really see the two different paths to power here. Most empire builders, they choose conquest. You subjugate people, impose your rule, and that almost always leads to resentment and rebellion. But the Ahoms, they chose assimilation. By weaving local peoples and their customs into a new, shared culture, they built a foundation of stability, turning people who could have been enemies into partners. Building a unified society, that was one huge part of the puzzle. But to really endure, a kingdom needs a strong economy and a robust social structure. And this is where the Ahoms introduced two truly revolutionary systems that would become the engines that powered their kingdom for centuries.
First, they completely revolutionized the food supply. Before the Ahoms came, most farming in the area was something called juming, or shifting cultivation. The Ahoms introduced systematic wet rice farming, a total game changer. They built embankments, dikes, and irrigation systems, and all of a sudden, food production just skyrocketed. This created a reliable surplus, which is the absolute bedrock of any stable, thriving civilization.
The second innovation was just pure social genius, the Paik system. Here's how it worked. Every able-bodied man from age 15 to 50 was a Paik, and he owed service to the state. But, and this is so important, this wasn't slavery. It was a social contract. In return for your labor, whether it was building roads in peacetime or fighting in wartime, you got tax-free land for your family. This system was the engine of the Ahom Kingdom, giving them a ready army and a dedicated workforce, all while making sure the people were provided for.
So these foundational policies, social assimilation, agricultural innovation, and this unique labor system, they didn't just help the Ahoms survive. They literally set the stage for centuries of prosperity and independence.
When you see the grand temples and palaces of the later Ahom period, just remember what you're really looking at. These marvels, sure, they were raised with brick and mortar, but they were financed by the food surplus from wet rice farming and built by the organized labor of the Paik system. The blueprint for all this grandeur was laid down in those first crucial decades. And that strong foundation created a fierce spirit of independence that just echoed for centuries. Hundreds of years later, when he was facing the mighty Mughal Empire, King Chakradhar Singha said these powerful words,
This defiance, it wasn't born in that moment. It was inherited. It was a direct legacy of the self-sufficiency and unity that Sukaphaa had forged from the very beginning.
Ultimately, the remarkable longevity of the Ahom Kingdom was no accident. It was the direct result of a deliberate and brilliant blueprint they crafted in that very first century. A blueprint of making allies, innovating agriculture, and organizing society for the benefit of both the state and its people.
Which leaves us with a final thought. The Ahom story seems to suggest that while an army can conquer territory, it takes powerful ideas, things like unity, shared prosperity, and community, to build something that truly endures. So I'll leave you with this question. What do you think makes a civilization last?